How to win big or lose badly in China. Now this is thoughtful. Hello, I'm Trevor Lai in Shanghai. China's size, complexity, and fast-changing nature can make building brands here seem like an impossible task. But there are ways to improve the odds for success. This week on Thoughtful China, Scott Silverman, Worldwide Managing Director for Huawei at Ogilvy Mather, will share strategies about how to win and lose in this important market. Scott, thanks for coming in.
Sure.
So you've put today's topic into a casino metaphor.
Yes.
Talking about the safe bets and the not so safe bets within China.
Yes.
But let's talk about some of the key trends here. I mean, what do you think are safe bets within China?
Well, I think first is, like you go into a casino, if I just may backtrack a little bit, there's two types of ways to enter a casino. The first way to enter is to walk through it and just kind of feel things out, look at the game, look at blackjack, look at the slot machines, and then have like an external power drive you to a particular gambling game. So it's based on faith. It's based on hope. And it usually means you're going to lose because there's no basis. There's not any odds that go into your decision. Then there are people that will, before they go into a casino, they'll know what the odds are. They'll know which odds favor them against the house. Because the house always wins. The fact is, which are the odds that will make it less likely that they are going to be leaving conquered? And so it would be things like blackjack, craps, and sports bets are very good odds. So they will ignore everything else. They'll walk in a casino and immediately go to one of those three things. And they'll avoid things that they know are terrible odds, like Keno and Wheel of Fortune and the pennies and the nickel slots. Well, the same thing in marketing. It's, if you know the odds, for the most part, you're able to understand which are more favorable depending on the audience you're going after. So some of the, like for instance, if you're looking at millennials, I'd say safe bets would be social integration, because you go after the influencers. You go after mobile integration, which is M-tailing. So it's really having them get the message at the right time, in the right moment, and they buy. And things like gamification, which keep them engaged and also are good research mechanisms. So I'll keep it with that genre, because I also have one where we're looking at a B2B audience, which would be IT guys, and they would have a different.
Sure, but let's continue down the consumer path that you're going on here. You're saying that those are safer bets than compared to what?
Well, for instance, big data. Everybody likes big data, but the way if you frame it, everything has to be the way a campaign is framed. So let's just say we're looking at small budgets, which means it's probably going to, for the most part, be digitally driven. And let's say the marketing director wants us to tap into digital trends, things that are hot, things that his CMO is talking about. And finally, demand generation. So based on that, something like big data is a really long play. So that's not a good bet. Digital ethnography, which is studying how people interact online, is a really nice thing. Has a long tail, but it's not where I'd want to be putting my money for demand gen. And the third is, this is a very sexy tactic. It's augmented reality. It's expensive. It's difficult to execute. There's been some campaigns here in China, like the Dove chocolate campaign, which was very good. But still, I wouldn't put my money on it. It's high risk and not a good bet.
But even if we take, so let's drill deeper into some of the ones that you do think are safer. I mean, you talk about M-tailing. That's still a very large area. And if I'm an advertiser and I'm new to the space, or if I'm just new to advertising on mobile platforms, how do I maximize my probability of success?
Well, you have to have a good offer, and you have to go to the right audience. So, for instance, if you're going after someone that are the millennials born between like 88 through the 90s, they, for the most part, in urban environments, they have the means, they have the money, and they like doing things on their mobile phone. So I'd say if there are offers that are conducive to them at the right point of where they are and, for the most part, what they want to buy, it'll be very successful. If you're looking for big ticket items, of course, I wouldn't say for B2B or for big ticket items that M-tailing is the way to go.
Do you think now we're talking about mobile penetration being extremely high in China, but there's everything ranging from text messaging marketing all the way through to now LBS-based apps, et cetera. In your view, do you think the market is still in a very early stage in terms of the type of technology that's being used to push out these types of offers from marketers? Or do you think that China is quite advanced in terms of adopting new technologies and new ways to reach these customers?
Well, I think it's early and they're advanced. If you compare them to the United States, for instance, the mobile penetration, but also the comfort in mobile data and mobile transactions amongst folks in China is much greater than in the United States. But still, it's in its infancy. It will get much more advanced as time goes along, as we go to 4G and as the technologies get better and faster.
In the US specifically, recently, there's been a lot of sort of uproar over privacy concerns and things like that. And some of that's attached to social networks and obviously as an extension of that, marketers and perhaps how they might use that data. Do you think in China there will be a point when consumers will become more sophisticated and aware and care about that? Or do you think that the consumers here are willing to sacrifice that privacy in order to become more tapped in or more targeted from a marketing standpoint?
I think that I think they're going to be very sensitive to it. I think that marketers should be careful and not volley people's information without permission and making sure everything is opted in. Otherwise, there will be a backlash, and we know how we know how outspoken the Chinese consumers are on in social interactions. They're largely negative, outspoken. So I think that would be a big risk, which I hope the marketers don't take.
At the same time, I would have to say that I've been surprised at how resilient brands such as Facebook have been to this type of quote-unquote backlash. It's not the first time that they've been in the spotlight, but it seems their user numbers don't seem to be dwindling. They still grow at a fairly quick pace, and it seems like consumers have an uproar and then they get over it and then they move on. Does that also surprise you?
No, it doesn't. We just tend to get anesthetized. After a while, after the initial outrage, after a while, we take a look at what the benefits are, and then the trust factor kicks in, or the ambivalence kicks in. I personally, I never connect if I'm in a third-party app and they offer for me to go through Twitter or Facebook. Never. I never linked it because I do not want them phishing for my contacts. I always use my Gmail address, my password.
So obviously convergence of all the different platforms is one area, but you also touched upon B2B. And if we look at the B2B, switch gears for a minute and look at that sector, how do you think China is different than the US in terms of safe bets versus not so safe bets?
Well, I think for the most part, they're quite similar because the B2B audience is much more horizontal. Especially, I've been working in the IT sector for a long time, so I cherry-picked IT guys. And if you take an IT guy that's sitting in China and you take an IT guy that's sitting in Germany and a guy that's sitting in New Jersey, a lot of the drivers, a lot of their angst points are the same. So therefore, where I see the safe bets, which would be CRM, especially when it's for a mobile CRM for things like channel, to where people are letting you know what they're interested in, and based on that, you're giving them the information is a very very safe bet. Whereas big data is not a safe bet because it takes too long. Things like transmedia storytelling is not a great bet because it's not transactionally driven. It's nice, but it's not transactionally driven. So that's the same thing in the United States, and the same, for the most part, the same thing in China.
But when you take CRM as an example, are Chinese consumers very vocal and very expressive in terms of what they want? Do they tell marketers directly, or do you find that you have to sort of pull a bit more to get what you need?
Oh, you absolutely, but what we do usually is we don't ask direct questions. We put them in a decision engine. So we say, well, here's a solution that you are probably interested in, but perhaps you don't know which stage you are in the decision cycle. So you then ask, it's a Q&A, but through something that is more interesting than just straight questions. And based on the Q&A, we let them know, based on what your answers are, here's where your stage is, and then would you like to have trialware, or would you like to have a salesman come talk to you about it? So it's giving them the benefit of, if they answer the questions correctly, the outcome will be, for the most part, positive for them.
Have you deployed any of these through multiple tiers within China, or do you focus really more on first tier and second tier markets?
No, multiple tiers for all groups. Again, I cherry picked millennials, which would be for the consumer, and specifically where I do spend most of my time with the B2B. Again, the drivers are going to be the same. It's just what their budgets are for the most part, and where they are in the decision cycle that are differ.
So it's interesting you say that, because essentially what you're saying is that their drivers are still the same, even if they're in different regions and within different tiers within China.
In the sectors that I've worked in, absolutely.
Okay. So Scott, specifically, what would be your example of a best bet for demand generation?
If you're looking for a consumer audience, especially millennials, I would look at social integration, where you could hit the blogs and hit the influencers, so you get the buzz and you get the cool factor. I do mobile integration heavily with m-commerce, m-tailing, so the transactions can be just in time for them. And the third would be gamification, giving them something that would be a little bit more involving for them, that would keep them activated, but also it's a good research tool for follow-up. So I'd say those are strong.
And give me an example of an area where advertisers are spending money today for this audience but are wasting it.
Let's say a lot of traditional advertising, for the most part, TV. And I'm not against TV. It's very important to launch a product, but I think in a lot of cases they sustain the TV too long rather than pumping it into things that are more experiential.
So up to a certain point, television serves its purpose,
yes,
it's delivering value, but after that threshold, really it's diminishing return.
Yeah, you set it up, and then you need to push it through.
Okay, and then switching gears to the B2B side, what's a best bet in terms of advertising through that sector?
Business funnel automation, which is very wonky sounding, is a very good bet, because what it does is it automatically builds in triggers based on where the business-to-business person is on the website. So they're able to get things that are not non sequiturs. So it is a episodic type of almost online conversation, is very effective. The second would be CRM, and if there is a channel component or a sales component, MCRM for the mobile phone. And the third is customer communities, because it allows the external third parties to be able to extend the message of the brand and maybe hit some spots that the brand cannot do by itself.
And going back to your earlier metaphor about gaming, what's an area where people are putting bets for B2B that are probably not delivering the value that they want?
For B2B, what I'm finding is that it's trying to overcomplicate it by being a little bit too creative. Transmedia storytelling, which works very well with consumers. And if there's a big budget where you have advertising and you have the story extending to digital and extends to print, and extends to outdoor, a lot of times it's taken to the B2B realm, yet it's a very limited platform. So it's almost like, yeah, this was a really good idea, but the execution is not giving us what we want. And it's a little bit of a kind of a slow actualization of whether it's working or not. For the most part, that's something I see investing that is not. The other would be big data. Everybody wants to do big data. I mean, it's the CMOs love it, but nobody really understands how they're going to measure it on a short-term basis.
Great. Scott, thanks for being on Thoughtful China.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Trevor. Thank you.
That wraps it up for today. Be sure to subscribe to us on Tudo and YouTube. You can also follow us on Weibo and Twitter, and join our LinkedIn group. We'll see you again.